Welcome back, everybody, to the RacePlazaMedia podcast, episode 14.
All right.
I think. Anyways, my name is Milan.
My name is Pia.
And in today's episode, we are going to be talking about Formula One that happened in Austria at the Red Bull Ring, also known as Spielberg. And then we also going to talk about MotoGP.
Yes.
In
the
TT
Netherlands.
Assen.
Yes.
I don't know how to say that in quote-unquote English.
I feel like TT
Assen?
Oh. I don't.
Immediately censored and demonetized. We don't get monetized
I mean,
anyways.
it doesn't matter exactly.
Okay, so let's get into the F1 race.
Yes.
So let's start about the starting grid, which I'm going to be honest, I was very excited about. I expected the McLarens to be in the front, which they were. And so P1 was Lando Norris, and he had been doing really well all weekend. Free practice. Starting with free practice, he's been very, very fast. I'm also really happy that he was, quote unquote, the more dominant McLaren driver. Just, it's a good way to bounce back from that, crash that happened.
In Canada.
Yeah, unforced error. Then, however, we had a Ferrari on P2 with Charles Leclerc. Followed by Oscar Piastri in third. And then we again have a Ferrari on P4 with Lewis Hamilton.
Which is nice. So we had McLaren, Ferrari.
Yes. In, of course, Oscar's defense due to the yellow flag in Q3.
Yeah, so Pierre Gasly had spun out pretty close towards the end, which kind of hurt a couple of people, including Oscar Piastri. Also, Max Verstappen had to back off of his last push lap. And so there was a couple of people impacted by it. And then so
otherwise, I would assume it would have been a McLaren lockout.
Yes, it would have been 1-2 McLaren and then maybe 3-4 Ferrari, depending on how Max his last lap would have gone.
It seemed like, and we're going to get into that in a little bit, that the Red Bull is just not where it needs to be at.
Yes.
The main Red Bull. So prior to that, he put in a lap. And so after Lewis, it would be George Russell in the P5, the Mercedes. They actually, as well as the Ferraris, as well as the Red Bulls, they all came with upgrades to the weekend. Following by, very, very exciting, Liam Lawson in the Racing Bulls in P6.
So exciting. And he was honestly so thrilled about it.
You could just tell.
Yeah, because, I mean, it's clear, obviously, he's been putting in a lot of work. The team has been putting in a lot of work. He's been getting a lot of flack online.
Yeah, of course, because Hajar has been just really the superstar of the Racing Bulls team.
Or he's just been super consistent.
Yes, and it's also unlucky that Liam had now twice back-to-back issues with his power unit, having to start from the pits and all this stuff. So it was just really exciting to see him, starting from P6 and also all that work.
Yes.
And that we usually don't get to see finally pay off. And it's also like coming from someone who just got so crushed by Red Bull by mishandling a situation so poorly, for him to like finally have that shining moment, making it into the top 10, making it into Q3, then followed in P7 by Max Verstappen. And rounding off the top 10, we have actually another rookie in there that we haven't seen in Q3 with Gabriel Bortoleto, the reigning F2 champion.
Yes, exactly. I was so exciting to see him up there because he's been working. Of course, everybody's working hard, but the cars just hasn't been ideal. Of course, we've seen Nico bring out some really great successes with the car.
Also capitalizing on racing situations.
Of course.
Which you have to.
That's part of racing, but it's just for him to be in one of the weakest car on the grid, for him to now finally make it into Q3, such a huge achievement. So I was really hoping for him going into the race that he would have a good race. Then he's followed by Kimi Antonelli in 9th place. And then rounding up the top 10, we have Pierre Gasly.
Number 10 in 10th place.
100%, yes. And then so going into the race in Austria, I like the track. You say you love the track.
I love the track. It is super fast paced.
Yes.
I love using that, especially when I play F1. And because I usually don't, quote unquote, play F1 a lot. If I'm racing, I'm doing iRacing. It's just honestly for me one of the best tracks to just get like back into the game because it is probably the easiest track. Is super fast paced. I don't love it as much as Monza, but Monza has that, that chicane right in the beginning, which can be a pain in the arse.
100%.
When you're getting used to
Even
things.
I know that chicane because I played a little bit of F1 and I always that chicane. I was like, oh.
Yeah, or GT7.
Yeah, but it's right there, right at the beginning. Like, why do we need to start off the track like that?
Yeah.
Anyways, so I was going into this weekend expecting a fun or a decent race because I just like the track. I like the atmosphere. Usually seems great. I mean, it's the Red Bull home track, essentially. Spielberg being in Austria being the home country of Red Bull. So
which is always so surprising to me.
Yes.
Because like Red Bull also like they come up on a lot of my YouTube shorts and they just do like the craziest things.
I mean, because they do all the X gaming stuff, BMXing, skateboarding,
they do
crazy
everything
things.
That's crazy you could think of. It's probably Red Bull's behind
that
it,
is
right?
Very true.
And it's just so interesting.
Extreme
sports. Yeah.
Yes.
It's so interesting to me that it's an Austrian
team. Yes.
And I mean the energy drink,
but
right? It's awesome.
I love it. But yeah, so going into this weekend, but even just starting off the race, we didn't even, we attempted to start the warm-up lap, and then we already had a situation with Carlos Sainz. He couldn't get the car to leave the grid at first.
He said something about being stuck in gear 1, and then there was an issue with the brakes. So maybe the brakes weren't releasing.
I don't know, but it didn't work at first. Then they were thinking about if he needed to push. But then they ended up, he was able to start, but he was so far behind already that they aborted the start already, which meant they had to do the whole thing again where all the teams came back out. They were 10 minutes on the track before they did a new warm-up lap. But in that time, Carlos Sainz's car was just completely retired.
His brakes caught on fire?
I think so, yeah. We saw a moment with like fire extinguishers and stuff. We did skip over that because we watched it a little bit later. We didn't watch it live.
We didn't get up at 6 a.m.
No, we didn't. No. I think it was 5 a.m. actually.
Yeah.
No, so not on a Sunday, my friends.
No.
So unfortunately, it's just so, it breaks my heart for Carlos because he's such it breaks my heart for any driver who just misses just the beginning of the race, who doesn't even have the opportunity to start the race. And Williams has been having some really nice moments, but over the last couple of weeks, not so many nice moments.
A couple of race weekends have been really bad because a lot of DNFs.
Yeah.
I mean, not to get into it already, but we had double DNF for Williams again, which is so devastating. We'll look into the team standings later on because I actually don't know, but this is severely impacting, especially because all the teams are scoring points now, you know? And
it's super competitive, like especially like this field situation. It's
because
a big
we don't really
midfield.
have a back end team as much anymore. Like Kick last year didn't score a single point, and now we have several times where they're scoring points.
Yeah.
And so this is once again literal millions of dollars that are on the line.
Yeah.
And Williams was trending upwards. And then there's also a part of me is not that I wish it on Albon, but because Carlos has been struggling so much in the car. He's the one who probably needs more time in the car, to get adjusted to it.
Yes.
And
it's also Williams is a legacy team.
Yeah, they always have a little corner in my heart that they occupy.
Yeah, it has a little special place in my heart, but also I think in F1 history.
Of course.
Or within F1 period. So it just hurts a little bit. So that was just such a bummer right off the start. When they did this second warm-up lap, there was a little scare moment because Nico Hülkenberg's kick Sauber didn't leave immediately off the line, but it just took it a couple seconds, and then the grid was bunched up anyway, so it didn't hamper the start per se. But then we did have quite an interesting start. So at the Spielberg Grand Prix, you have a really short run to the first right-hand corner, which things can bunch up there pretty quickly. And then the second really big overtaking opportunity is into turn 3, which happens pretty shortly after. So those were the two big moments that we were looking out for at the start specifically, which things happened right then to get go. I mean, we had Norris. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Norris had an excellent start. Leclerc also had a good start next to him, but Lando immediately pulled to the right to kind of box Leclerc in. to get to the inside for that first turn, which gave Oscar Piastri a beautiful outside line. So he was then able to overtake Charles Leclerc on the outside because Charles had to back off a little bit going into T1. So then immediately after T1, we had Norris in first, Piastri came in second, and Leclerc had unfortunately lost his position.
And then Lewis actually also lost his position to
George Russell.
George Russell, because if you're starting on the right side, it is usually not the preferred line because you want to be on the left side, making that right-hander, obviously, opening up the corner as much as you can. And then going into T3, because then you have a big rundown to T3, which is like a hair needle corner. Is that how you say it in English?
I think it's hairpin needle.
Hair needle pin.
No.
It doesn't matter what it's called.
English.
In English,
it's clearly not our first language.
Very tight turn.
Yeah.
And so you have a rundown, and it's slightly turning left. So this is where you have T2 essentially, and then so you have always a shoot down to there, and then we have everyone turning, everyone still bunched together, and then unfortunately Kimi Antonelli, who started in P9, right? Was a little bit surprised about how soon the people in front of him were braking, and he ended up having to really jump on the brakes. He ended up locking up the rear. He was able to avoid Liam Lawson in the Racing Bulls car. However, he ended up hitting Max Verstappen. And so essentially immediately it was a safety car out. And then also immediately both of those drivers out of the race. You saw both of them also talking to each other afterwards. And then Max also said in his post-race interview, he's not upset about it. It just happens.
Yeah. I was... Like I said it while we were watching it, I was very positively surprised. I mean, I get that you can't really be mad at the situation. There was no intent there.
Malicious intent.
No malicious intent there. It just happened. And I don't know if there's maybe a little bit more grace given also because he's a rookie. Not that it's a rookie mistake. It could happen to anybody. I mean, we saw lockups constantly happening throughout the race and things. So I thought it was really nice that Daddy Max was just like, well, it is what it is. Or part of me also thinks like, you know what, maybe he was just also frustrated with the car this weekend. So he's like, maybe I'm glad I don't have to battle in this box for 70 laps, you know? This is just me interpreting things into it.
I mean, of course, very painful for the Drivers' Championship, which is already a struggle for him anyways, in a car that is not as competitive as it needs to be. But I mean, of course, it's nice that he didn't try to rip off his head. I didn't expect it. It is, of course, very unfortunate. Also unfortunate for all the Dutch fans that probably make the trip specifically for Max out there, because it is usually pretty orange, the crowd.
And it's also just for Red Bull because...
Yeah, of course. And then because the other car is Yuki, and Yuki didn't make it out of Q1. And he's been like struggling a lot in the car. And I'll say something about that a little bit later. But yeah, just a little bit unfortunate. I will say this is probably the most exciting thing that happened.
I would say outside of that, it was the battle between the McLarens, especially the first 20 laps where they were behind each other. Piastri was in DRS for majority of that time, if not all of that time.
All of the time. He never lost DRS.
Right?
Yeah.
And then so they were battling, and they had some really nice battles, very fair, very clean. So I don't think, but outside of the last overtaking attempt that Piastri had, it was never too close. So there was no risk, I really think. Because they're both very good drivers, obviously. And so they overtake it. But it was fun to watch. Yeah. Because Piastri got really, really close many a times. And it's just both cars are highly competitive. Both drivers are incredibly great at what they're doing. So that was really interesting. But then, once they went into the first pit window, that kind of went away. Or there was a question whether or not Piastri would be able to catch up, but then there was potentially also some wrong strategy calls a little bit and things. But
I mean, I don't think it's necessarily wrong strategy calls, but then you do have the situation, because they did ask him, how do you want to do it? Do you want to pit now and have a closer gap, or do you want to pit later but have fresher rubber, which he opted for, which I think was also the right call. It's just that you never know how it is with traffic, because on a short track like this and a fast track like this, you will run into traffic sooner or later. That's just what it is.
He did say in his post-race interviews that might have not been the best call.
Well, in hindsight, right?
But no, of course. So you don't know if that would have changed the outcome. But I mean, decisions have been made, and that's what it is. You know.
What I did also wanted to point out is, so before the safety car out, Lewis was actually able to overtake again Russell, which was also very important, claiming back that P4. And then, because obviously behind the safety car, you're not allowed to make any overtakes. But then also the Mercedes just nowhere to be found. It was like, it wasn't doing good, but it was also not doing bad. It was because, like, if you're coming off of a win and then going to a race where you're, what is it, over 20 seconds behind P4, pretty tough.
I mean, that was Russell was also saying that it's just as soon as the tire get overheated, something doesn't work with their car, so it takes away from their pace, which is just unfortunate.
33 seconds was essentially between them.
Between
so P4 and P5.
That's a lot. But we didn't really see Russell's race at all.
No, he was kind of cruising by himself.
He was in his own kind of world. The same thing with the two Ferraris. We didn't really see them after the beginning because they were in their own world separately. Also, there was a lot of space between the two of them.
I think the only incident was also then, so once they were on the hard tires, so the majority of the grid started on mediums. We had a few, I think it was like 5 or 6 people that started on the softs to give themselves an advantage, because most people opted for a 2-stop race. So it was a lot of people did medium, hard, medium. There were some people who did medium hard, but essentially Lewis wanted to stay out longer on the hards, and you could hear him essentially arguing with his engineer on the radio. We didn't hear back the feedback. The only reason why I'm not being too hard about it on Ferrari is because I thought that they wanted him to pit right then and there to avoid traffic, because they pitted Charles the lap earlier to go from the hards back onto the medium for the last stint, and essentially Charles was then in clean air, and I think they wanted to give Lewis the same thing, but I didn't have the insight obviously on that.
I'm not sure about that, but it's just the way the communication appears, and at least when it's broadcasted to us, it just seems so just like there's no listening to each other. Like, especially we've talked about this before, if you hear the McLaren's team radios, there's like communication. The engineer asks something, the driver replies, and then there's some listening happening.
It's like, hey Oscar, do you want A or B? These are your options, and that would be the potential outcome. And he's like, okay, I want to do this, and then he did that.
But then with Ferrari, there's no communication really.
It doesn't seem like it.
It doesn't seem like it. I feel like it also, there was a moment, I forgot, with Leclerc once, where he didn't feel like he was listening. They were giving him instructions about how to drive. Or what
to lift and coast.
Exactly. And then he was like, I'm already doing this.
Yes.
But then I'm also like, can you not see this on your screens?
I don't know if it was also like a reminder, or they wanted him to lift and coast more, and they thought like maybe he was using up the tire. Obviously, this is sometimes very we don't know, we don't have all the insight.
True.
And then it is also interesting because Lewis's race engineer was also Carlos's as well as Vettel's race engineer by Ferrari. And especially with Vettel, there were many situations where it was just like where Vettel would give him instructions what he would be doing. And it's just, he must be, people, I read comments online, where people were like, he must have dirt on Ferrari.
Because he's still in position.
I'm not saying, because obviously, once again, we only see one side of it. We only see what is broadcasted. So it's hard to gauge how much the driver is correct, how much the race engineer is correct. But it is quite baffling to me what a prevalent problem that is within Ferrari compared to other teams where there's so much better communication. It was like, hey, XYZ, this is the plan,
And it just also causes extra stress on the driver and the team that doesn't aid to anything during a race, you know?
Yeah.
But anyways, we did have some great battles in like the midfield. We had some really great battles also between Bortoleto and Fernando
I think
Alonso
that
and
was
Liam
probably
Lawson.
the most exciting thing because that happened literally on the last lap.
Yes, but I mean, they've been battling throughout the thing. We did also have Tsunoda and Colapinto getting into a little kerfuffle.
Yeah.
And that also led to Tsunoda getting a 10-second penalty because he ended up spitting out Franco Colapinto. He was able to then regain position eventually, but then also Franco ended up hindering
Oscar Piastri.
Oscar Piastri, or pushing him into the grass, which was so risky. I was screaming when that was happening.
I just don't think he probably in that moment was aware what was going on.
I don't think so either, because he was probably just focusing on his battle.
Yeah.
But then I'm also like, why doesn't the team communicate like, hey, watch out, Oscar Piastri just is coming out of the pits. You're getting the blue flag. I mean, I don't know what's
what
not
I also
happening
think
there.
is like, I don't know if the team didn't communicate it with him because like he didn't technically have to battle Yuki that hard because at that point Yuki already had to serve a 10-second penalty.
Yes.
So even if you technically finish behind him or if you don't overtake that in this very moment, you have then, you know, the 10 seconds that you're gaining on him, and then you ended up picking up a 5-second penalty, which is just unnecessary.
And you're also not battling for points at this moment.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. You're battling for position and you want to do your best, but it's just like, it seems like a terrible decision to make on track. And it's a little bit unfortunate that, that also it seemingly no one communicated with him or it wasn't broadcasted on you know, while we were watching it. But I also thought it was interesting that the broadcast kind of almost missed the safety car restart.
Yeah.
It was very odd because they also ended up showing people walking, like Max Verstappen and Kimi Antonelli walking around during the pits, and I'm like, I don't want to see this if the race is happening.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Like, or show it in a small window, but you don't have to put this on the big screen, especially right when there's a race restart that's happening.
No, I agree. They fumbled that restart a little bit, or it happened so quickly, and usually they give the audience a little bit of a moment to like get ready for it. And then also, I didn't feel like it was on the big screen. I mean, I was like close up to like Lando leading and Oscar Piastri, so it was a little weird. But
because usually they show like, oh, now when is he gonna try to restart it, right? When he's gonna pick his moment, but they didn't show any of that. So I feel like F1 has been fumbling the ball a little bit more when it comes to that. What I did wanted to point out, and you brought it up earlier, was the battle between Fernando Alonso and Gabriel Bortoleto, which was really, really awesome because Fernando was the only driver who actually opted for one stop, and which was a call made by Aston Martin, which was the right call because the Aston Martin was not as fast as the Haas or the Saubers. This whole weekend, Fernando didn't make it into Q3. He started in 11th. However, in the last lap, they were essentially battling with each other. And then Lando and Oscar were coming out, right? So then Gabriel Bortoleto let Lando pass. Obviously, he has a blue flag. And then Lando was coming up onto Alonso. And then Alonso did make room for Lando, but he obviously timed it in a way that he would get DRS off of Lando. And the thing about it is,
smart.
He is. And the thing about it is, when you have a blue flag, you obviously have to make room. But if the race leader is ahead of you and you're faster than him, then you're allowed to race to unlap yourself, right? And Fernando obviously knows that, but Fernando also knew that probably another lap he's not gonna make with Gabriel Bortoleto. So he will. I mean, the McLaren is obviously the faster car too, but I'm gonna let Lando obviously get across the finish line before me, so then I don't have to do another lap.
Yes, so smart.
It's so smart because he finished then essentially one lap down, right? But he was able to then finish in essentially P7, and it was a really awesome moment because this is clearly, you also see someone with a lot of experience. Fernando Alonso, obviously not a easy person to overtake, very great defensive driver, but then also using all of that experience, you know, getting the DRS in the right position, letting the other person by, you know, but then be like, okay, I'm gonna let you actually, because there was a moment where they're shooting down to, I don't know if it's T5, I think it is, because I don't know if that counts as T4, after the hairpin, where he's essentially alongside the McLaren, and then he kind of backs up, gets behind him, probably picks up a little bit of a slipstream, I'm not sure, and it was just a really, really awesome moment, I thought.
And then after the race, which was a really beautiful moment, which got me a little teary-eyed, of course, is because Bortoleto ended up coming in 8th. His first time scoring this season, or
driver of the day
in F1. Yeah, he became voted driver of the day deservedly. I'm very happy for him to get that. He ended up earning 4 points for Haas. Kick Sauber. Nico right behind him, also earning 2 points. But then in Park Ferme, he's barely getting out of the car. Alonso's already standing right there next to him, and then Gabriel's going in for like a high five, and then Alonso just grabs his hands and just shakes them and gives him a hug. And obviously Gabriel Bortoleto is part of his management team. I think he's been for years part of the Fernando Alonso family, whatever his management company is called. But I just thought it was such a beautiful, because they were racing so fiercely,
but fair,
on the track.
Hard, but fair,
of course. But then just for Fernando just to take that moment and celebrate Gabriel, because it's a huge achievement,
I think also really who I thought would have deserved, besides Gabriel, to be driver of the day is Nico Hülkenberg.
Oh, 100%.
Starting in 20th and then finishing in 9th. Yes, we had 4 people who didn't finish the race.
Yeah.
But still, you overtook all the other guys on the track. And really, really excellent performance. Who would have thought last year that we would have 2 kick cars in the top 10 and also collecting points multiple times throughout the year. And this is race 11 or race weekend 11 out of 24. So we're not even halfway there yet, right?
Yeah, it's so beautiful. Definitely 2 of the winners for this weekend. Another winner of this weekend, I think, is definitely Liam Lawson.
Yes, absolutely.
He ended up coming in 6th, his best result in F1 this season. And of course, like we said, he had an excellent qualifying session. So I'm glad that he was able to bring it home. So that was really nice. Then
I thought also a highlight performance was Esteban Ocon finishing in 10th when starting in 17th.
Yes.
Esteban, I don't know if this is also someone who's just able to manage their tires, but Esteban is actually quite often out-qualified by Oliver, but he a lot of times finishes ahead of him because he just has better race pace. But they seem to be doing really well. I'm excited that the Haas is so competitive, and the car seems to be good. So that is a very, very exciting thing to see.
Yeah. So the top 4 ended up being what I thought the starting grid would look like. In a way, so Norris, Piastri, Leclerc, and then Hamilton. Surprisingly, Leclerc was really happy with his 3rd place, because I think he has all reasons to be happy. The upgrades are doing well with Ferrari. He knows that they just don't have the pace to quite compete with McLaren, especially at that track. So this was the best result that they could have asked for.
I think in the high speed corners, the McLaren is like 10 kilometers faster than the Ferrari, which is insane.
That is insane.
And he said in his post-race interview, even if he would have been able to maintain 2nd place after the start, or even do the thing and overtake Lando, the race pace would have not been there to really defend.
I mean, within a couple of laps, both McLarens, when they were battling each other, they were already 2, 3, 4 seconds ahead within just a couple of laps. So it was just they're in their own world a little bit right now.
So just for reference, place 3 was 19.8 seconds behind the race leader.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it was an okay race. We had some nice moments, but at the end, it got a little bit more interesting again, because we were trying to see if Piastri would be able to make it up to Lando. Of course, there was also a lot of traffic at that point in time, which there were moments that helped him. There was moments that didn't help him. But yeah, it was just didn't quite work out this weekend for him. But it was a successful weekend for the McLarens. Right now, Oscar Piastri is still leading the overall driver championship with 216 points. 15 points behind him is Lando Norris. And then several points behind is Max Verstappen. And then Russell is somewhat close to Max, because there's 146 for Russell and 155 for Max. So there is definitely some fighting at least for third place. But again, there's still a lot of racing this season. So
Yes. Talking about team standings now, actually really, really exciting. Ferrari was able to overtake Mercedes in the standing.
Yes.
So we have McLaren in place 1 with 417 points. Not surprising.
Yeah.
You know, they've been winning most of the races. Then we have Ferrari in second place with 210 points. Then we have Mercedes in third place with 209 points. It doesn't help that now out of the last 5 races, Kimi Antonelli had 4 DNFs.
Yeah.
And 3 of them were not his fault. Those were technical failures on Mercedes' side, which is very unusual. Then we have in fourth place Red Bull Racing with 162, which honestly, Max is working his ass off for those points.
Seriously.
We have Williams in fifth place with 55 points, Racing Bulls in sixth place with 36 points. So not that many points in between those anymore, 19 to be exact. Then we have Haas in seventh with 29. We have Aston Martin in eighth with 28. And then Kick Sauber in ninth with 26 points. So they're all within like 3 points of each other.
Very close.
And then we have rounding off Team 10 is the Alpine with 11 points.
Yes.
So pretty bad.
Yes.
On there. They've been just struggling. I think Pierre has been having, like, Pierre's probably the guy who will be scoring points.
Yes.
Most likely
too.
And I know that he's been really struggling with the car, with grip and all this stuff.
I mean, we heard him over the radio today too. He was complaining that there was something wrong with the car, and he was asking the team to look into it because he wasn't sure if he could even keep it on the track.
Yeah.
I mean, we could see him just like swerving or like
wiggling out and stuff like that. Is clearly missing grip. It sounds like there's balance missing in the car. And then one thing that I wanted to mention, because I saw something online on motorsport.com, where Helmut Marko, who is like whatever his position is with Red Bull, who gets like the junior drivers and stuff like that.
Something like a youth development kind of person or whatnot.
Position, exactly. He was talking about Yuki, because Yuki's obviously super frustrated. He also said that he's just so frustrated that he's doing worse than he did in a Racing Bulls car. And he said that essentially the current Red Bull car is it's like walking on a tightrope, the car, and there's like such a small margin to make it work. And the problem is that the car is essentially built around Max, right? He didn't say that, but the car is essentially built around Max. And then you have a car that's so tricky to drive for Max now, right? Who has also complained about the balance and all the issues with the car, you know? And then having someone else try to drive a car that is very, very difficult to drive. And I feel really bad for Yuki, because I think in a car that would be easier to drive, and he would be doing much better, because Yuki is not the type of person who is sitting on a back grid. He would be someone who would make it consistently in Q3, but clearly this car is a mess. And it's really unfortunate what Red Bull has done to their essential rocket ship. And it does raise the question, it's like, was this really all Adrian Newey? Isn't that interesting? Because like the Aston Martin now is becoming really competitive, right?
Really is an exaggeration, but it's getting more competitive.
And they're making it into the points more often. But
it's just such a flawed way of thinking that they built a car mostly suited for one specific driver, and also a driver who is in all rights excellent and outstanding, and also very specific in his driving style. Like, you can't build a car just for, if it's a team sport. The F1 movie emphasizes it too, but then you build it for just one driver.
Well, yeah, and then it's also this thing where you now lost twice the Constructors' Championship, where you won the Drivers' Championship, right? And this is like, Mercedes didn't do that, right? Mercedes maybe lost the Drivers' Championship, but they still won the Constructors' Championship, right? And it's stuff like this where it's like, and this is not only something that happened with Max, this also happened when Sebastian Vettel was in the car. So seems like you need to learn the errors of your ways.
Yes.
But I guess they first need to figure out what the hell is wrong with their car. I mean, they still have like half the season. We have Silverstone coming up next weekend.
Yes.
I'm hoping kind of for a rain race. Come on, England, don't let us down. Because in Austria, there was rain on Friday, I think, or Thursday. There was heavy rain, and there was like winds up to 100 kilometers. Oof. I think Albon was doing an interview while he was like, oh, the weather's not so bad. He was getting like a weather warning alert. He was like, maybe we should go to the hotel. So I was kind of hoping for something because something like sometimes putting rain into the equation, it just
makes it interesting.
Look at Australia. It was a fun race because
or
rain.
last year Brazil, where we ended up having 2 Alpines on the podium.
Exactly, that's what I want. Yes. I want something Ferrari on the front row. Okay.
But we'll see, because I mean, last year Silverstone, Lewis won too.
Yes, because of McLaren's strategy issues.
Yeah, but I mean, it was
a win. Is a win.
It was a fun race last year.
It was awesome.
So we'll see what happens this year. But I'm looking forward. So that's coming up this upcoming weekend already.
Correct.
So we don't have to take a break. We go right into another weekend of F1.
And now we're